For those that haven't joined before, this is Irregular Wisdom Office Hours. I ask unplanned, general, and specific questions for your wisdom, and you ask me. In the meantime, we share openly, likely from whatever is currently happening, to get at our wisdom. And today I thought we would go back to basics here in just well-being. So, what does well-being mean to you guys? We hear this term a lot now, and well-being, of course, the thing in the title that's, I don't know if it's overlooked or what, or underemphasized, or not taken into account in the right ways, maybe, sometimes, is the being part, being. So, of course, in spiritual circles, we usually see, talk about it's I'm a human being, not a human doing. But the matter of the fact is, we do a lot of stuff, right? And things to be well, there is a fair amount of doing as well. So how do we integrate these two of being and doing? Do they need to be integrated? Well, Insight Timer is the right place to work on our beingness, so to speak. And our doing is pretty much our everyday lives and kind of what we do outside of formal practice. I would say until we start to bring these two together, and how much emphasis do we place on one over another? But of course, the basics here before we get into being, because it is more rarefied in today's society. What are the things we need to do for well-being? And I think this varies highly on who we are and what our challenges are and what weaknesses we need to strengthen. So I think in general, if I can draw some cliches about masculinity and femininity, the masculine needs to kind of clear its mind and in order to start opening its heart. And then our feminine, it's kind of the other way around, where the heart needs to be kind of stabilized and before you can start building the mind, perhaps. And for the guest waiting, I would encourage you to join in a little bit here too. Rejoin again, please. So where was I? Yeah, the being and doing, and yeah. How do we, the strength, the weaknesses we would like to strengthen? So what are some of the universal aspects of well-being? Someone might just say, well, as long as I feel good, I'm well. And I think there's something to that, but I would also say that maybe drug addicts from time to time feel well when they're using. And of course, that's not what we're talking about here. Some things that are deceptively pleasant can be deceptively bad for us. So one of the classic teachings, there's 4 different ways, There's something that is worthwhile and pleasant, and of course that's the best, easiest one to get into, right? Then there is something that's worthwhile for us, helpful, but it's unpleasant. And so these are the things that we're challenged with, the things we know we need to do, but they're not pleasant. And so we can be kind to ourselves when we need to do these things in our well-being routine. And then we've got something that's not helpful, but it's pleasant. And that's what I was talking about with maybe drug addictions and whatnot. And then we've got the the not pleasant and not helpful. So we definitely want to do the things that are helpful, that are for our well-being and well-being of others, especially in the long run, whether they be pleasant or unpleasant, right? So motivation, there's so much information out there. But there's also a lot of kind of superficial and deceptive information. So one of the skills that is always good is discernment, in knowing what is worthwhile to pay attention to and what is not. And again, for our long-term welfare and happiness and that of others. And so once we have access to the right information, there needs to be motivation, I feel, towards well-being, especially in the steps we need to take, and maybe the practices and things we need to just be. For me, I tend to go, do, but not at the same pace I used to. And so this is where a formal meditation practice allows the space to just be. Now, I don't know if anybody's listened to that's kind of a more advanced meditation practitioner on the Buddhist path and stuff, and they might be like, well, one of our core issues is this notion of being and becoming. This is the more subtle layer, and you hear so many people talking about, I want to be something, I want to become this, and I want to be this, and I want to become that. And the opposite to this is non-being and non-becoming, the kind of craving and desire to not be something, to not become something, kind of to wipe out, obliterate, go into oblivion about who we are, what we are. And the other extreme is being and becoming, where it keeps fueling notions of being and becoming, keep fueling this notion of dukkha or unsatisfactoriness, stress in life. A lot of it, I feel, is due to the fact that we want to keep perpetuating this notion of a me, myself, and mine in unhelpful ways, and not seeing the subtleties of there is really no permanent I, me, and mine. The most obvious version of this is this body, right? We can't take this body with us when we go. We think it belongs to us, it's ours, and it is our responsibility to take care of, to clothe and to feed and to shelter and to be well, for our practices and things we have to offer and do in this life. It's just when we cling to the fact and try to deny the fact that we are growing older, that we live long enough, we will reach old age, and this is not to be a bummer. This is to be less deluded about the way things actually are, right? And so when we can align with this truth that this body will shed off someday, and that if we live long enough, we will grow old. This alignment with the truth, instead of trying to deny or run from or fix or change ultimately these inevitabilities, it can bring a great deal of contentment. And I think that's another word that's often overlooked around well-being is contentment. How content am I? And especially, here's a huge spiritual question: how content am I when things don't go my way? Or just more directly, how am I when things don't go my way? Excuse me. And we've all been here, right? We've all looked back on our past behavior and see that it was probably not the most becoming, to use that as a pun here, behavior or way to see things and respond to things. Most likely we find ourselves reacting to without much training of the mind. And so this is why, again, meditation practices are so helpful too, because they allow us to have more space and to build this space where we can have the option to respond to things instead of habitually react to them. So again, these inevitabilities of old age and death, and sickness is another one. I don't know if there's a human alive that hasn't really experienced sickness, and we haven't gone beyond these states either. And again, this is not to get bummed out. It's just, this is an inevitability. And so the more we can reflect on this, at least daily, it's not like we want to spend all of our time reflecting on it, but then when it happens, there'll be less, oh, why me? Why does this happen? If only I would have done this to stay well. These type of things. And of course we do what we can again, but it is an inevitability until we go beyond sickness, if that's even possible for some of us. Now, what are these other 5 reflections? Those are 3 of them. Another one is that we take self-responsibility, even if it's of the older generations where they've been trained more to see a lot of professionals and have other people do things for them. Or we have the other kind of end of the spectrum where I won't have anybody do anything for me. I know I'm just going to figure it out myself and do it myself. However we deal with life challenges and what comes at us, whether it's ours or not, if we're experiencing a phenomena, then it is our responsibility for how we see it and how we respond to it. And that includes not responding to something. So this self-responsibility of what occurs in our experience is very empowering too. When we can take our power back in a way by taking responsibility for my thoughts, speech, and action. And of course, this can all be done with, in my opinion, it most likely needs to be done with a huge dose, and sometimes it kind of feels like a doping effect. A good one, though, of kindness, self-kindness. And that could even mean being kind to ourselves when we don't have kindness, or have compassion for the fact that I just can't have compassion for myself right now. Again, this goes with authenticity and honesty as well. That it's okay not to be okay all the time. Now, how does this look in relationship with others too? Oh, excuse me. This is what it's all about. And so what I've been talking about so far, and I'm going to wrap up here in just a few minutes, is we've been in relationship. I've talked about relationship to oneself for the most part, but how are we in relationship to our world and those around us? From all levels to those that it's really easy to be in relationship with. It's very rewarding, and we go out of our way time and time again to interact and relate to those loved ones and dear ones in our lives. To those that are neutral, just kind of no emotional charge. And how are we in relationship to kind of challenging people in our lives? And then more theoretical things about all beings, in the whole world. How do we view like humanity or people in this world in general? Or more immediately, in more practical terms, everyone we've ever had contact with. How are we towards that? When do we need to brighten our mood and uplift it? And when do we need to kind of ground ourselves and shake ourselves out of whatever it may be? How do we deal with overwhelm is a big one, especially when we talk about really big well-being challenges for those of us who have, well, we've all dealt with trauma from one degree or another, but depending on the severity level of trauma, how are we when we get overwhelmed, and talk about resourcing. So I'm going on, and we know there's many like multi-dimensional levels of wellness, even not, and I've just been covering some slight little sliver of the basics today. So I appreciate you all for joining, listening in, and yes, may you all come to know the most optimal, ideal forms of well-being. And the same for those you love. May all beings everywhere realize awakening and be free. Well, I've got a guest joining here. And hey, Truly Julie, nice to speak with you again.
Nice to speak to you. I'm loving your title.
Oh, very cool.
And I'm also loving your conversation as well.
Oh, right on.
It's thought-provoking, which I like.
Cool.
It's not a list of to-do things either, which I really appreciate at the moment. I'm observing a lot of conversations that kind of gives me a list of to-do things I should do. And this conversation, it allows me to become aware of things, and then what I do with that in my own time is good. Like you said, it's a case of sometimes feeling overwhelmed with things, topics, conversations, and things that you have. But the way that you've worded this morning, I've been able to sit and listen and contemplate and not necessarily do anything, but carry that conversation in my head today, to allow me to become a little bit more aware of stuff, the way that I'm thinking about, for instance, the way that I'm viewing the experiences that I've had in life. Another instance, it's just a nice space for me to be able to do that. So, I'm trying to come up just to say thank you very much.
Well, I
The way
appreciate.
that you've had a conversation with the way that you've expressed. So yeah, Joshua, you are awesome, and the way that you put things is so beautifully. The ability for me to absorb it gently is great, and the effect of it is good too for me. So thank you.
Well, I really appreciate that, Julie, and you have such a lovely way of picking out people's strengths and relating it to your own experience.
Yeah,
I appreciate that as well. And yes, it's such an important point. And I've just accidentally did not go live on my other streaming software. And so now I'm starting this. So people might be like, oh, what's going on? What's he talking about? But it was just, I just ended on Insight Timer Live. But you mentioned a great point about not having another wellness to-do list, and not to defend those or anything, but for some people that are just starting out, these can be helpful. And I am a Capricorn, right? So they like lists, and I do these. But when it comes to things like this, there's so many of these type of things already out there. So I like to just speak from experience and what's kind of coming through in the moment. And
yeah,
it is a really good point about well-being, the kind of, I don't know, the feeling or easing into it. A lot of, another thing I didn't mention is about well-being is ease. There's the Metta Sutta in the Buddhist Theravada Buddhism. It's may all beings be at ease. Like just as a single mother would protect with her life her only life, so we should cherish all living beings. You know, it's such a beautiful image, and one that's just amazing. And noting that we should just be at ease. And a lot of the, dis-ease, we hear that in spiritual circles too, but being at ease, I can't really overemphasize it again enough. And this is not a concept. I mean, it can be a concept, but it's something we can feel right down to our bones. And we can feel when we do have those moments of deep embodied ease, how well we feel.
Yeah. Yep. Hit the proverbial nail on the head.
Mm-hmm.
It's just kind of in a way it's recognizing the self in you, and that it doesn't really require anything else, just that recognition of self. That's well-being. Then when you can work on that then, and you can look at it and say, what am I wanting, what am I requiring, what am I curious about, what am I interested in, what do I think will enhance me? That's well-being and working on well-being. I think that's just my opinion.
Yeah, and it's self-awareness is a good thing, especially for people who are denying themselves or kind of acting unconsciously in the world. Absolutely. And then from there, I think we can even just go on, what's needed. What are the things that are really important to be well? And, what actions, what thoughts, what feelings, And another thing I didn't mention was, what are our core values? And
Yeah.
instead of having wellness goals, which I'm not saying people shouldn't have, but if we identify what's really important in life for us, and then we
Yeah. What are
align
your core
we
values?
align with
Even just
those, right?
questioning what those are as
Yeah.
well, even asking
Oh,
what
sure.
those are, because it's one of those things we don't really ask
Yes.
until we sit with that essence that is in ourselves, that
Mm-hmm.
is in this body that we're sat in. It's that, that's what makes that spark, those core values. Those are, they're the catalyst for all actions, all feelings, all behaviors, all connections almost. The things that we see are
Yes.
all about our core values. The
And
things that we notice.
that's
Yeah.
right. And if folks haven't identified those, they might not be living from that place. But once they're really identified and clarified and kind of see the importance of them, then that's a way we can orient our way in the world. We can align with those core values, and they can be like a compass to direct our thoughts and actions and our words. And it brings a sense of well-being and satisfaction when we're in alignment with those. And we don't have to be so goal oriented, I don't think, because then when we're aligned and fulfilling and going towards these values, then it brings a sense more of contentment than just meeting a goal or working towards goals. And I'm not saying, again, don't give up goals, but these core values I found are really important.
I think the difference between goals and core values is core values are something that sit within. And sometimes when you set yourself goals and you don't achieve them,
Yes.
that kind of then tells you a bit more about your core values. You see, this is the thing. This is why it's good to have them and to
Yeah.
recognize what they are, because they will then guide your actions, thoughts, and feelings. Whereas sometimes when you don't hit those goals, you come back and beat yourself up about it.
Yep.
Bring them back into that core value again.
That's right. That's a
If you
good tip. Mm-hmm.
an example of that is, I would like to run 100 meters. So I set that as a goal for health reasons, all the reasons from my core values. I want to be healthy, I want to appreciate the body I have and all of that. So I get to set off on these 100 meters, maybe doing it in small steps, whatever. But if I, for any reason that I don't hit 100 meters, I can't run 100 meters, what am I going to do with that? I take it back in as, I'm not good enough to run 100 meters.
Yeah.
I didn't put enough effort into running 100 meters. I didn't practice enough. I didn't. And that goes back into that core value and starts telling you something about yourself. So that is why working from your core values is better and more beneficial to aim you towards those goals.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So that's the difference between the two. Is you're working from within outward, and that's great. And that means that whatever happens on the outward does not come back in. You don't allow that back in to your core. It's yes, let me figure out a different way. Let me work this round a different way, because my core value is I can, because I believe I can.
Yeah, it's really good that we can use our goals, success and failure, for feedback on our core values. Well, Julie, our time's almost up here. Thanks again. It was a pleasure
Pleasure.
chatting with you again, and I wish you all, you and yours, the continued wellness and
We
well-being.
are a team, Joshua. We are working as a whole. All of us individually are working towards this whole of making us all well, comfortable, and giving us self efficacy. That's the key. Much love. Thanks for having me, Josh.
Well, it's been my pleasure, and thanks again for joining. And yeah, I'd like to echo the notion of interconnectedness that you talked about. Sometimes it's easy for me to lose sight that we don't exist in a vacuum, and we are interconnected. And then this notion of advocacy, advocating goodness and helpfulness in ourselves and others and all beings everywhere, and all that is being connected with and through. So advocacy is a beautiful notion too. All right, well, I will chat with you all. Well, I don't know if I will or not, but may you all experience optimal and ideal well being. Bye.